Welcome to the Here I Am talk show with host Jamie Willis, where we discuss today's truths, people's stories, testimonies, healings, miracles, and so much more. Let's get started, honey. Hi, and welcome to the Here I Am show. I'm Jamie Willis, and I'm so glad that you all are here to be able to listen to my story that is going to be today. So I am a little nervous. I can't lie about that. It's always very difficult to tell your own story, but the Lord gives me the strength, and the Holy Spirit gives me the strength to be able to reach other people, and it's including women and men, because it's a topic that's just not talked about. It's a topic that everybody keeps it a secret, keeps it like shame, lies, anxiety, and it also can go into depression. So I wanted to be able to get started this morning and tell you a little bit about my life. I was 19 years old, and I had a boyfriend at the time. We were dating for about 2.5 years, and I did love him, and I thought I was going to be able to be with him for actually forever. We were planning on getting engaged and to be able to marry, a little short time after that. Sorry. A short time after that. And it happened. It was the first time that I ever had sex with my boyfriend. And about 2 months went by, and I didn't get my period. And I thought I was just late because I always had trouble with my menstrual period. So I was at school, and one of the girls was talking about, she was pregnant and that she was about to have an abortion. And actually, it was going to be her 5th abortion. And I was just like, how could somebody, be able to have 5 abortions? And I was sort of shocked, but I was going back and forth whether or not I was pregnant or not. So I went home and called my doctor and had a pregnancy test. And the pregnancy test came back positive. I was absolutely devastated. I called my sister and I said, you're going to need to pick me up from the doctor's office. I said, I can't. I'm having trouble talking. I'm having trouble being able to drive. And she goes, well, just come home, just come over to my house right away. And I actually couldn't tell her, what just happened, because I was just too devastated to be able to talk on the phone. So I got to my sister's and I told my sister that I was pregnant. And I called my boyfriend, and he says, well, talk to your sister for a little bit and then come home. So, once I was talking to my sister was like, what are you going to do? How are you ever going to be able to support this baby? Pretty much that our parents might be a little bit upset with me. And that was just devastating to me. I was ashamed. I was frightened. I didn't want my parents to look at me as a disappointment, because I was the type of child or teenager that did everything that my parents told me to do. Sometimes I was a little rebellious. But at the time, my sister just had, or just about to have a baby. And it was going to be the first grandchild. It was going to be, the first baby that was born since me. And I was 19 years old. So during that time, um, I've, always been a believer. I've been saved since I was about 10 and a half years old, went to church, um, knew about Jesus, knew about his love, was the local babysitter, around the block. Everybody used me to babysit. I loved children. And I knew that was the only thing that I ever wanted to be, was a mother. But I started getting a lot of confusion in my mind. I started getting a lot of doubt that you're not good enough as a mom to be able to raise this baby. You're only 19 years old. You're too young. You don't even know what you're going, what you want to be. You're going to college and to become a real estate agent. Or I'm sorry, wasn't a real estate agent. I am a real estate agent now. I was going to be a travel agent and was going to travel agency school in Pompano Beach, Florida. It was Florida Atlantic University. So I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me, and I really didn't know what to do. So my boyfriend was really upset. He didn't want to be a father. He was working at the time, but not making a whole lot of money to be able to support us. He was still living with his parents. He was 4 years older than me, but he went through a lot. He was smoking a lot of pot. He was on, actually, back then it was called Quaaludes. He was a manic depressant, which is now bipolar. But I didn't know at the time, what that was called. I was the type of person that wanted somebody just to love me and to cherish me. Because during my childhood, it wasn't easy. It was, I would call it dysfunctional family. But I loved my parents. I loved my mother. My mother and I, at the time, were very, very close. So I could not tell her that I was pregnant. So during that time, I was going back and forth, deciding what I was going to do. And meanwhile, weeks were going by, and that I was already, a little bit almost too far along. So I went to my boyfriend, and I went to his parents, and I went to my sister, and they were saying that the best option for me is to be able to go on with my life and for me to be able to have an abortion. I was extremely upset, but I could not at the time think about, giving birth to this baby and how am I going to support it? How am I going to be able to give the love that I should as a mother? And it pretty much, when I look back, I could have done it. I could have made, a better choice. But I decided to go ahead and have an abortion. Um, his mother, my boyfriend's mother, went ahead and made an appointment. And I went with his mom and I went with my boyfriend. And I was extremely quiet in the car. I remember just sitting in the back seat, just staring out the window. And so I get to the clinic, and there was one girl that was standing by the door. And she said to me, she goes, "I can be able to give you a pregnancy test." And I was looking at my boyfriend's mom, and I'm like, why would I need a pregnancy test? I already know that I'm pregnant. And I didn't realize that that girl could have saved me. But I didn't know. I didn't know anything really about abortion and the trauma that you go through and the lies. I thought, it was something that it wasn't even a baby yet, that it wasn't even developed, that it was just a clump of cells. That's what they tell you. And this is back in the early 80s. About 84 is when I went, 1984. All I wanted to do was, I thought that would help me to move on with my life. So I walked into the clinic, and at that time, clinics now give you 2 appointments. Like the first appointment is a consultation, and they tell you, the process of the abortion, which they don't tell you the whole truth. They just tell you that it's safe and that they're not killing the baby, or once, they called it a clump of cells, and that they use the clump of cells in order to do science research on development of babies. So I went into the clinic, and I sat by the chair and gave the lady, I think it was like $300 some. I gave her the cash. And I kept on saying to the lady who was taking my money, and she didn't say anything. She was pretty much, you were just another person in there, taking the money, and then you go back and have the procedure done. So I kept on saying to her, I'm a good girl. I'm a good girl. I've never done this before. Am I going to be okay? I'm so sorry that I have to be in here. And she didn't say anything. So they put me in the back room, and there was this nurse. I put the robe on. She had me get undressed. And I remember this nurse. She was extremely comforting. And so she's like, just lay back, keep calm. The procedure, will not take long. And the baby's just a clump of cells. We don't put it in a garbage can. We put it, for science research and to be able to help other babies. And I'm like, okay. I never thought about it because I really didn't think that it was a life. So I lay back, and my robe was up, and actually my legs were exposed. So I remember her taking the robe and like, okay, the doctors will be in just a minute. So 2 doctors came in. I can't tell you what they look like. I can't remember. I think I just didn't even look at them. So they put the IV in me because I did not want to be awake during this procedure. I wanted to be completely knocked out. And So I was knocked out in about 2 minutes, 2 seconds. And then I woke up and there was two other girls um, laying on the cot. And when I did walk into the clinic, there was, I would say there was about 10 to 12 women that were in there at the time. But the time that I woke up, because it took quite a while for me to wake up from the anesthesia. So when I did wake up, there was two girls there, but they were getting ready to leave. So I was the last person in there at the clinic, and they were getting ready to close up. So I guess they were only open till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon at that day. So I woke up and the nurse comes over to me and says, okay, it's time for you to go to the bathroom. Once you're able to go to the bathroom, that you're able to leave. So I just remember I was very confused, shaking, was pretty much all I wanted to do was just lay there in the cot in the fetal position. But I knew that I had to get dressed and I really couldn't wait to get out of there. So I come out and my boyfriend's waiting for me. And then all he can say to me is, I'm so glad it's over. And I'm so glad that you did this. And pretty much that was the last thing that I wanted to hear. I wanted somebody just to comfort me. Didn't realize at the time, before, how I would automatically go into depression and anxiety. So I went home and actually went to my boyfriend's house because I didn't want my parents to know what I have done. So I stayed there for about a couple hours. I couldn't eat. She fed me some toast and some tea. And I called my sister, and my sister's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're okay and that it's all done and that you can go ahead and move on with your life." Little did I know of the turmoil that I would have gone through for the next 30 some years. But actually, the first year, I can't remember a whole lot. I remember that I had a hard time working. I had a hard time respecting my boyfriend at the time, wondering why he was able to move on and I couldn't. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings. I couldn't tell my parents. There was many times I would go to my mom. My mother would be at the foot of the bed. She would be saying her prayers. And I kept on asking her. I asked her maybe about 5 or 6 times through the whole year. And I'm like, if I tell you something about me, would you still love me? And my mother's like, yeah, you can tell me anything. And I'm like, oh, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And Mom, there isn't anything that I've done. She goes, I said, you know that I'm a good girl. And you know that I always come to you whenever I need anything. So, I just left it at that. So as the first year, I did graduate being a travel agent. I barely made it through. I think I had the lowest score in the classroom at the time. of graduation because I could not focus on school. I couldn't focus on work. I was just pretty much just going through the motions. And at that time I was going, I was going to church. I was raised and, in a church. And I don't think there was a time that I never was in church, as a child. There might have been some different times, because we did go through, different types of churches. And at that time, the abortion rights, were really getting heavy back in the 80s. And then there was pro-life speakers, and then there was also pro-choice speakers. And this is the time that they started really rallying around the abortion clinics. And I don't think, if anybody remembers, it was Anita Bryant who came out there and was exposing the truth about abortions. There was a lot of lot of speakers and a lot of pastors were speaking against abortions. And at that time, and still, pastors do not help women that are post-abortive. They do not. They like to say that abortion is wrong, abortion is murder, and pretty much you committed the worst sin in the world. And how can we as Christians go through that? Isn't it supposed to be, when we go to church, we're supposed to have the love of the church, have the mercy of what Jesus, gives us, and the forgiveness. If he can forgive us for our sins, he can forgive us for what we have done. It doesn't matter what you've done or how many times you've done it. And these pastors do not stand up to help these people that are in their congregation. You're supposed to help the sheep. You're supposed to help your flock. How can you go up there and preach about love and mercy and forgiveness when you can't offer that to your congregation? So there was no pastor, there was no mentor or anybody for me to go to. And all I went through, was shame, fear, lies, that I thought I would never, ever be able to be forgiven for what I have done. And so during, getting back to my boyfriend, we dated for about another year, after the abortion. But I had a hard time loving and respecting him, and things didn't change. He still was, going back and forth with jobs. His bipolar at the time was getting extremely bad. It was to the point that he was getting angry at me. He choked me twice, and he did it pretty much in front of his family, but his family didn't do anything about it. Screaming and yelling. He was taking a lot of Quaaludes at the time. and he just had a lot of things that are going on in his life, and I couldn't I just couldn't be with him. He wound up going into jail for past traffic violations, and then also after we went to a concert, he wound up getting arrested for indecent exposure at the beach. So that's just another story. So I just felt like I just really needed to um, be done and be done with the relationship, because I was mostly being in the relationship because I was a fear that nobody else would love me, especially for what I have done. So, well, now we're getting back to my child would have been in her 30s, and the Lord revealed to me that it was a girl, and I named her Mackenzie Grace, and I cannot wait to see that precious baby. And the Lord has told me that, people that have aborted their children or miscarried, that we will have a chance to be able to raise that child. So I cannot wait to see her. The Lord has used this precious child in order to save other children. And I believe that with the bottom of my heart. So I was in my 50s, and I was in church, and I was listening to the pastor, and this pastor came up and says, well, we have a special speaker today, and his name is Scott Hord with Operation Saving Life, and he came up and spoke, and I just get excited just about telling this story. So he was talking about women that were post-abortive, and that the Lord forgives you. And the Lord says he wants to take that shame away. He wants to take that lie away. He wants to take that fear away. And he just wants to comfort you. And I was sitting in my seat, and I could not contain myself. I was just like, I looked at my husband, and I'm like, I need to talk to him. I need to talk to him after, as soon as he's done talking. And because he was going to go out to the hallway after. And he's like, okay. He's like, are you all right? And I'm like, I think I will be. But I need to go and talk to him. So after he was done talking, so I went out into the hallway, and I went up to him, and I'm like, you told my story. I was 19 years old, and I had an abortion, and I haven't told too many people. And he just hugged me, and with tears in his eyes, and he says, Jamie, you are loved. You are his child. And he wants to rescue you. And he wants to take that pain away. And all you have to do is just ask for forgiveness. And I said, man, I thought I did. I thought I did ask for forgiveness. And then he goes, I know you probably did, but have you ever forgiven yourself for what you have done? And I'm like, no, I have not forgiven myself for what I have done. And he says, well, today is the day to start. So after he spoke, after I talked to him, they were having this 12-week course. It was called Surrendering the Secret. It was about for post-abortive women who have gone through that. And so I went to a meeting, actually 2 nights later. And I didn't know what to expect. But when I walked in there was quite a few women that were in there, at least 25 to 30 women. And so we heard stories of other people's abortions, of what they've been through. And through this course of surrendering the secret, it gets into the deep rooted healing of your abortion, and to be able to help with forgiveness and mercy and strength. So I listened to these other women tell us their testimony. I'm like, wow, how can they be able to tell their testimony? How can they go up there and tell their deep, dark secret that still is a lot of people's deep, dark secret, because they just feel like they can't talk about it. So, and then I'm like, yes, I am going to sign up. I'm going to sign up for this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to try anyway. So about 2 days later, they had their first meeting, and there was about 6 women with me. And we all told our story, and it was pretty brutal. It was a pretty long 12 weeks, but I couldn't wait for the next meeting, because during that time they give you a booklet, they give you homework, they ask you to write letters to your boyfriend, or even if it's your husband or whoever, and just writing a letter stating how you feel and that you do forgive them, because they did have a part of it too, and to write a letter of forgiveness, even if anybody's involved. So I wrote a letter to my boyfriend's mom, and then I also wrote a letter to myself, forgiving myself. And then during these past couple weeks, we all met, we bonded. It was such a relief that the anxiety started going away. The fear was going away. And all I could feel was love and compassion for people. It's made me humbled. It's made me be able to listen to women and men, because men get kicked off to the side when it comes to abortion. There's a lot of men out there that are grieving still, and it hurts them to be able to have other relationships with women. Sometimes they wind up being abusive, angry, because they don't know where that anger is coming from. And it's usually for what they have done. And unfortunately, it gets passed from generation to generation. So after I took the course in surrendering the secret, I started becoming a huge advocate. I knew that the Lord was going to be able to use me in order to help save babies, and to help other women go and get the healing that they need. And telling them, a whole bunch of people about taking the course of surrendering the secret, and how it's changed me. And it has completely changed me. The Lord has done a miraculous. healing on me. I was a type of person before, you probably wouldn't even know, that I was extremely shy. Had a hard time being able to communicate with people. I love being around people. Um, I was actually a little bit of a talker in school because that was my way of communicating with other people, because I was the youngest and there wasn't anybody really in my neighborhood and friends and to be able to talk to. So I always got in trouble at school for talking. I really didn't want to do my work. So, but the Lord has used my testimony to be able to be bold and courageous. And so the past 3 to 4 years, I've been with Scott Hord and going to Planned Parenthood over in Nashville. I live near Nashville. And standing in front of the clinic and to be able to rescue babies and be able to talk to these women before they walk into the clinic and to be able to pray over these women. And then actually to pray over the building, because prayer is a huge part of a relationship with our Lord. Prayer works. And it's a number one telephone line to the Lord, is to be able to pray and tell the Lord what's on our heart. So when I was at the clinic, I was going there for I would say about 3 or 4 months, and I was just like, why, Lord? Why can't I have a rescue? The rescues would always happen the day that I wasn't there, or the day after, or the day before that I was on the streets. And so I'm like, okay. And Scott's like, you'll have your rescue. You'll have your rescue. Don't worry. It'll be all in the Lord's time. So one time I went, and it was hot that day. I remember it was like, whew, Lord, I don't know, but I'm looking like a hot mess here. And everybody that was standing outside of the clinic had all left. And the Lord just kept on saying, stay here, stay here. And so I remember being by myself and just walking up and down the sidewalk and just praying. And all of a sudden, this car pulled up, and it was a lady by herself. She spoke Spanish, but she did speak really good English too. So she said that she was going in there to have an abortion. And I told her a little bit about my life and what I've done. And I told her about the ministry of Scott Hord with Operation Saving Life, that we would be able to help her. And I gave her one of the cards. So she goes, well, I'm just going in there just to talk to them. And I'm like, okay. So she drove up and went into the clinic, and she was in there for quite a while. And so I was still by myself. I was still there, which is, when you go to any of these clinics, it is not in a safe area. It was pretty much downtown Nashville, where there's a lot of poverty. And so that's where Satan winds up putting these clinics on these people that don't have money, poverty. And usually it's in the Black community, unfortunately. So anyway, so she she came out, and I'm like, okay, this is actually good news, because she was in there for an hour. And if you go in there for an abortion, usually they're in there for like 3 to 4 hours. So she comes back out, and she pulls up, and she goes, thank you so much for talking to me and telling me your story. And I decided to keep the baby. I was like, are you serious? Are you serious? You're gonna keep the baby? And she goes, yes. She goes, I couldn't go through it. She goes, something inside of me, I just could not go through it. So she goes, I just went in there and talked to them and canceled my appointment. She goes, that they did try to force me into staying. And I'm like, of course they did. And so she left, and then another car pulled up, and it was a young couple, and they were from out of town. And she just found out that she was pregnant, and they were getting ready to move out of state. I think they were going to go to Arizona or something like that. And the young woman was just crying and nervous, and I can tell that she was having, a little bit of an anxiety attack. So, and I'm like, are you guys okay? Are you okay? And she's like, no, not really. But we have an appointment and we have to go in there. And I said, well, can I just tell you just a couple things before you go in there? And whenever you're stopping somebody in the car, you have to make sure that there's no other cars that are coming. You can't block the driveway. You can't block the sidewalk. So sometimes you're only getting like 10 seconds to be able to speak to somebody before they go into the clinic, because we're not allowed on the premises at all. We're only allowed on the sidewalk. Well, anyway, so I told her a little bit of, about my story, quickly. But the boyfriend, after he dropped her off in front of the clinic, he pulled back around. So then I started talking to him, and I'm like, this is my story. As a man, I said, please do not allow her to have an abortion today. If there's anything in your heart, you need to go in there and go get her. And he goes, well, it might be too late. It might be too late. And I said, no, it's not too late. I said, you have every right as a father to go in there. And if you don't want her in there, you need to take control. So he's like, okay. He goes, I'll go ahead and park. So he did go in there and got her out. And so she got into the car, and she pulled back around, and before they left, and they're like, we wanted just to thank you so much for being here and allowing us to hear the words that we needed to hear. And then I said to her, and I said, he really loves you, because I didn't know if it was her boyfriend or her husband. I said, he really loves you with the bottom of your heart, from his heart, that he wants you to be safe. And whatever you guys go through, the Lord would be with you. And here's my card. And if there's anything you need, if you need some clothes, if you need money, anything, because this is what our agency does, is be able to, not only rescue babies, but to be able to be with that baby and with that mother, and even with that mother, if they have other children, to be able to be with them and give them what they need. Because a lot of it, people wind up having abortions because they don't have anything. So, and if they don't have anything, then they just wind up just going there and having the abortion. So that was 2 rescues in one day. And I was on cloud 9 and just praising Jesus and thanking him so much for saving these babies. And after that, I was pretty hooked. So I went still to the clinic once or twice a week. Mostly it was once a week that I went there because I'm a real estate agent, and so I had to still provide for my family. So then after that, and then we got the notice 2 years later that Roe v. Wade was overturned. So I went on over to the clinic, and there was balloons, there was thank you signs for the Lord for what he has done, and it was a huge celebration of life. And so now we're still battling abortion. There's still a lot of other states that are still legal in giving abortions. And then also they are giving abortion pills, and they're giving it to these women. Some of them are even by mail. And what they do is they take the first pill, and what it does is the tissue, the uterus, starts decaying in the first process. And then the day later, they have to go and take another pill. And that pill will start the process of you aborting the baby. But these women, it's horrific. These women have nobody beside them while they're having an abortion. They are having labor pains. They are bleeding a whole lot. And they are having this at home by themselves. I just can't imagine what these women, have gone through. Which I do. I do know what they have gone through. But at that time, I was knocked out because I couldn't go through the procedure without being asleep. So I know that we had, Roe v. Wade overturned, but Satan is still going to use whatever he can to get rid of God's children. So I want to talk about what I found and what is the word myth mean. There's 7 myths that the Lord has given to me about abortion. And the first one, a myth, is an untrue story, which is a false rumor. And these are the things that are being said, the people that are pro-choice, because this is what they believe, because that's what's been said. And if it's said time and time again, so it must be true. But the Lord told me that life begins at conception, right at conception. And he also told me, and I looked it up, what is a fetus? What does it mean? And people said, well, it's just a fetus. It's not human, which is a lie. And I found out the truth yesterday. A fetus is a developing human. From usually, it starts 2 months after conception. It's a developing human. So how can anybody say it's a clump of cells? It's a human. And you know what fetus means in Latin? It means little one. So how can you call something little one if it's not human? And on conception, it takes 30 to 45 minutes for the sperm to reach the egg. So once the sperm reaches the egg, that's conception. It's life. But in order for the life to live, it needs to go into the uterus. And in order for it to go, once it goes into the uterus, it attaches to the umbilical cord, and they're able to have life inside there because it needs to be able to breathe and to eat and to grow. And at conception, each baby has its own DNA. So that takes care of that lie that the baby does have DNA and the fetus is a developing human. So I just wanted to be able to share my story. And I know that my story, there's a lot of other women and men who have gone through what I have. And I wanted to let you know that you are forgiven. You are wanted. Jesus absolutely loves you. The devil wants to keep you in his grips. And what better way to be able to keep in the devil's grips is to be able to have shame and hurt and anxiety. The Lord wants you to go to him and ask for forgiveness, and then also to forgive yourself, because you can absolutely be forgiven. So I just thank you and for listening to my testimony and my truth. If there's anybody out there that would love to talk to somebody, I will listen. I will give you the respect that you deserved. I will give you no shame. I'll give you the love of what I was given the day that I surrendered the secret. But my email is right here at the end of the show. You can contact me anytime. And I do have other people that are really good in listening, and have other organizations to be able to help you. And I thank you. And thank you for watching. Here I am. Thank you for watching the Here I Am Show. For prayer requests, questions, or show information, email me at hereiamshow@gmail.com.